Shall we, Nadia?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so you guys can see my screen, right? Content page. Okay, let me just wear my earphones real quick. Can you see my screen, right?
Yes.
I'm not tripping. Okay. Alright, so to start off, this will be what we'll be going through today. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to Inkie Learning. So this is actually the project that me and Nadia are from, and some of the admins here as well. Yeah, so let's just go into that. So we're actually an educational passion project, and we actually consist of a group of JC graduates. We mainly to provide students from all backgrounds with quick, accessible, and quality academic help. So our eventual vision is to actually collate and invent useful supplementary materials for secondary and GC students. So we also hope to hold more educational activities such as this webinar today, to encourage students to find joy in learning, to think critically, and eventually even grow their network. And I guess personally, I also hope that through our work activities, you'll be able to find that, okay, actually, schoolwork, exams, in Singapore are actually pretty manageable if we, study smart and if we try our best as well. Okay. And these are some of our statistics as of recently. So currently we have 36 official Inkie tutors on our server, and we have almost all JC subjects covered. So currently there are about 1,000 students on our server, and not all active, but we are receiving growing traffic almost every day. Yep. And without further ado, we go into the introduction of us. So I'll go first. I'm Steffi. I'm a HCI graduate from the class of 2020. I took Biochem Math and English Language and Linguistics. And I was from the humanities program in my secondary school. And I will be studying psychology and linguistics in NTU starting this year. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nadia. Steffi and I were actually like Sec 3 and Sec 4 classmates. So
Yeah.
we were in the humanities program in Nanyang in 2017 and 2018. In JC, I took Geog Econs Literature Math, which is a very standard combination. And honestly, I think math turned out to be one of my better subjects, even though I was a humanities student. Yeah. I'll be studying law at NUS, so yeah.
Okay, and without further ado, we move into the actual webinar itself. So we actually saw the many questions that you guys had in the form. So we switched it up a little bit. So actually right now, we're going to go through from start to end, basically how to do an AQ and how to do it well. Okay, so because there's actually a mix of J1s and J2s here. So J2s, please bear with me if you already know this, but I'll try to make it as painless as possible, okay? And going straight into it. So question types. I'm not too sure if every JC goes through the different types of questions you might see in the AQ. And I'm pretty sure some do, but anyway, I'll go into it. Evaluation questions. So basically it's the questions that ask you, do you agree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? So basically what you must do is to examine the basis of the argument. Think about whether like the argument can be backed by happenings in the world or even your society. Okay, or actually most of the time in your society. And another kind of question would be how how convincing are the author's arguments? Those are the persuasive questions. So you actually have to critique the author's writing technique. For instance, like you have to zoom in on their tone, their analogies, their example choices, and even spot the fallacies that they actually make. So are their statements correct? Are they fair? Yeah, these are things you have to delve into if it's a persuasive question. Okay, so for application questions, which is basically the point of AQ, so you'll definitely see this in the section. So basically, it's when they ask you how relevant or applicable are the author's arguments to you and or your society. And basically, yeah, you need to analyze and evaluate whether the author's arguments are closely linked to you or your society. And I know some of you might be thinking, oh, but actually, I have seen all these three types of questions in the same, AQ question. And yes, that is true because that means that particular AQ question is packed with a lot of requirements. Okay, so what I mean by question types is the types of is the kinds of requirements each AQ question might have. Yes, and that is that. So let's go into the general structure of AQ answers. So introduction. Okay, so I will go into this because I saw a question in the form saying that asking if, oh, actually, do I need to write an introduction? Does it even have marks? So I think across the different JCs, there might be mixed opinions. But from what I know, from what my teacher taught me, and from what I heard from my friends in some other schools as well, is that the introduction actually does have a mark also. So, and most importantly, it's actually how you, it's actually to guide you to a good starting point. Okay, so if you do write an introduction, you can like consolidate in your mind what the author's arguments are, as well as write out your stance once and for all, very clear for the examiner to actually see it and understand and be guided. Okay, so what you should do in your introduction, you should do a brief summary of the author's arguments, and you should state your stance very clearly. Please agree or disagree. Okay, and then most importantly, answer the question. This is across every subject, every paper. A levels is testing you on how to answer the question. So please respond to the question's requirements. Refer to the previous slide if you need some tips on how to pick out what the question's requirements are. Okay. And yeah, so how exactly do you figure out the question's requirement? And this is also an example intro. Okay. So I took a question from one of my papers. I forgot if it's in TYS or my schools, but anyway, Robert Grover laments the decline of human imagination and its effects. How far would you agree with his observations? Support your answer with examples drawn from your own experience and that of your society. Okay, so you can see very clearly here with my color coding that there are basically three main requirements. So firstly is the how far would you agree with his observations? You must answer that. And then your own experience is good. It's very, very good if you can actually, apply your own experience in this particular AQ. And of course, most importantly, you will see this across all AQs. Even if they don't ask it, you probably have to do it as well, with relevance to your society. Okay, so I broke my intro down into two parts, as you can see here, A and B. So with reference from the previous slide, so here A and B. Yeah, so what I did was I summarized what the author was talking about in the passage, and then I went on to talk about my stance. And yeah, it's all color coded here. So as you can see, this highlighted area is my stance. I am generally inclined to disagree with his points, particularly those which claim humankind's progress in science have been hindered. Okay, so this is basically like your thesis statement in your essays. So it's pretty much the same thing. It's where your examiners should be guided. Okay, so moving on into body paragraphs. So as most of you guys will actually be familiar with, most important thing when you're writing a body paragraph is peel. So you must always peel. Basically, that is to have your point, explanation, elaboration, evaluation, as well as your link. Okay, so I put another extra thing here. It's called signposts. So what I mean by signposts is first and foremost, second, or next, or in addition. You get the point. Okay. So these are very good things to have to tell your examiner that you are moving on to your next point, or you are stating an opposing view. Okay, so yeah, you guys can take a short while to read through this, but it's very standard stuff. Okay, so I will move on now. And okay, don't be alarmed by this wall of text. These slides will be sent out to you guys. So what you have to do right now is just to make sure you see the progression. So PEEL. Okay, so one very important thing is your line reference. Okay, I put paragraph reference here because I was rushing for time during the exam, and I guess it's actually also accepted, so it's fine. Whatever floats your boat, as long as you have that reference. Okay, and I signposted, and I took a quote directly from here, and it's perfectly fine for you to do this. You don't exactly have to paraphrase. That's also kind of a waste of time if you're gonna try to do that for every point. Yeah, okay. And then I explain my quote, and then I go on to talk about it in relation to my society, and I go back to link back to the initial point. Okay, and we'll talk about the bolded part later. That is actually how you can weave in balance into your supporting view. Okay, and finally, once again, this is disputed across people of different JCs. Do you give a conclusion? For me, very standard. Answer is yes. Okay, that is because it's about coherence. You have a start, you should have an end. Okay, so give a brief conclusion, even if it's a one-liner, it's fine. Just end it. Tell them you have ended. Okay, and then please do not introduce any new points you did not talk about earlier. That is like shooting yourself in the foot. It's the same as how you will write your paper one. Do not introduce any new points in your last paragraph. Okay. And yeah, so these are actually standard stuff from your rubrics. I believe each school will have given you like, you know, the 0 to 3, 4 to 6, or 4 to 7, and then like 8 to 10. Yeah, so it's your REC, which basically requirements, explanation, evaluation, and then your coherence. Okay, so we'll go deeper into that, into balance and evaluation later on. And most importantly, for to do well for evaluations is to develop your ideas to logical conclusions. So, for instance, do not say the author's argument is very flawed because, you know, like for instance, my cat is very imaginative. It's a pretty bad example, but don't say stuff that when you reread it, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so next. These are the things that an AQ response is not. Do not rant. You can roast, but roast gently. Do not show that you're an extremely angry person. Okay, and try not to nitpick the small details or regurgitate the author's point. So like just copy and paste what you see in the passage. That's not the point of the AQ. The point of the AQ is to show your voice. Okay, and on to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Steffi. Okay, wow, that was a very insightful sharing for the first part of AQ, which is traditionally quite difficult to do well and enjoy AQ. But okay, never mind. Let's move on. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, okay. So there are two ways to score for balance. Steffi, can you move to the next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, yeah. So first we must weave our arguments. Secondly, we must give credit to points or arguments which deserve it because, yep. So, yeah. So how do we weave, right? So weaving is like a high level technique. And honestly, if coming from me, like I feel that if you feel that you are not confident in writing an AQ body paragraph yet, you can always go start simply with I agree with this author's point of view, or I disagree with this author's point of view. As Steffi has stated, answering the question is very important. So if you are not confident, you can always start with I agree, I disagree. But okay, never mind. We'll see how we weave okay. So in your supporting view paragraphs, you need to add balance, and balance is very important because life is a balancing act. So, sorry, Steffi. So some good examples to actually add the element of balance in would be to show that, hey, you agree with this point, but you also feel that the argument can come from somewhere else. So here are some examples in terms of how you can spice up your balance in the essay. My favorite one would be, while there is some truth in statement, it is mostly untrue that, then you put forth your argument. Yeah, but y'all can choose your favorite balance techniques lah. Yeah, thanks. And we always must give credit, as I stated earlier. So in this paragraph that Steffi has...
I got Zoom.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, in this paragraph that Steffi has written, she actually puts it very directly that she would like to give Grover some credit in arguing, blah, blah, blah. And she also evaluates and provides evidence. And I think this is actually a very good paragraph because, it shows the reader that you actually consider all points of view. And it's actually a multi-dimensional and very insightful kind of paragraph. So it's not flat. There are like many dimensions to it. And I think, yeah, it's definitely a good paragraph. Next. Okay, so we need to signpost because we need to guide the reader's frame of mind by like adding firstly, secondly, or thirdly. Because sometimes when the reader reads too much, right, they kind of get confused. They're like, what's this point talking about? Is this like agree, disagree point, or is this like a what number of how many points are there even in this essay? So signposting would actually provide that kind of direction and flow so that the reader would be comfortable reading your essay, and that's what you want to do. You want to make the reader enjoy your essay more so that, mark on like a Christmas night where it's cold and honestly, yeah, man. Okay. Secondly, you need to state the point that you concede to. So here is like it's compromising a little bit. It's saying like, oh, okay, I will give some credit to this statement, but honestly, I think it is of my opinion that then you state the opposite point, and then you the third point would be that briefly explain the point you have quoted, and lastly, you just use evidence from your society to justify. So evaluation, how do I make solid, convincing evaluations? So I think for literature students, or I'm not sure if ELL students need to do it, but I think geography students and history students, like we all need to do some evaluation. But how do we get a good standard of evaluation? So my technique would be to keep asking myself why. So I feel that when you make a claim, you have to I keep asking myself why until I reach a point in which all questions are answered. But there is also a common pitfall of making irrelevant points, and this always stems from when you're making these points from a stream of consciousness. So one way to correct this kind of thinking would be to consciously ask yourself what the logical links are. So, for example, A leads to B, B leads to C. If you feel that B leads to E without like C and D, then you have to backtrack your thought process and find out what C and D is. Because if not, if you just go for like A, B, E, and then F, your paragraph will not really make sense. And you may find yourself having to become more long-winded to actually explain C and D afterwards. And yeah, next. So what contributes to evaluation marks? Firstly, we have to make a firm judgment on the author's ideas, so giving your personal views. But it's very common for you to agree with the author and to actually use some of the points that the author has actually mentioned in the passage. And that shows that if you do that, even if you agree with the author and you have your own thoughts, it seems almost as if you don't have your own. Okay, and therefore, we have to add our individual knowledge into this writing to show that, hey, actually, I know about this topic as well as your author does. Okay, maybe not as well as your author does, but never mind. Secondly, evaluation techniques. We have to think about what did the author not address, any fallacies, this is a generalization. And I think this can actually be practiced by in daily conversations with your friends, your family. When you're reading a passage from somewhere, newspaper article, you can question yourself, what exactly is not being addressed here? Why is this person saying this? And you can even check the tone. Is it fair, too accusatory, fear-mongering? Yeah. And actually having adequate balance in your entire AQ will help with your evaluation marks. Yeah.
And moving on to the next chapter, which is basically what a lot of you were asking as well. So it is your AQ response types. And I think what you're most familiar with is, single passage. It's less confusing because, when it comes to double passage, there's a lot more permutations to deal with. And okay, so for single passage, if you agree, it will basically be argument 1, I agree with this is this. Argument 2, I agree with this is this. And then the third one would be, however, at the same time, there is this one weak argument that, I admit is, not very applicable to my society or accurate or convincing, etc. And then if you disagree, it will be the other way around. So argument 1, I disagree with this argument 2, I disagree with this. And then you go on to, however, at the same time, there is some merit in argument in the next argument. Okay, and the most exciting one would be the double passage. So how would you answer double passage AQs? So in my school, we have this thing called the AQ matrix, which is this cute diagram over here. So you see passage 1, passage 2, and then arguments and then for passage 1, when you're talking about it, you will have to write out arguments you agree with or are applicable, and then at the same time there is one weakness or something problematic in this passage, and then your second passage you have to address that what you do not agree with or is not applicable in your society. And even though on the whole I disagree with the author of passage 2, there is one point which I concede. Okay, so for this particular format, you might be thinking, oh, so do I have to write 4 paragraphs? Well, Nadia will explain later on, okay? So this is the most ideal, of course, if you have time, but we recognize that once you're at the AQ, which most of you will leave to the last minute to do, there's probably not enough time to write 4 full paragraphs with your intro and conclusion. So there's a way around this, don't worry. Tip, so basically make your life easier by choosing one author to agree with more, okay? Don't try to sit on the fence and say you agree or disagree with both but in different aspects. This definitely will not work well under time pressure unless you are extremely skilled or you're a genius, okay? Or you write very, very fast, okay? And maybe Nadia can tell you a bit more.
Yeah, okay. So double passage AQ used to be the bane of my existence because it's like, what? We only have like 20 minutes to analyze, the passages and write a full-bodied response. And I realized that the length of the AQ actually you don't need to ask for extra paper. Keeping it within the 1 or 2 sides is really enough. Yeah. Because sometimes when you're more long-winded, the points get lost. And yeah, okay, anyway. So here's an intro example. It's very important in a double passage AQ to actually write an intro because it's already confusing and we want to give the reader clarity. So y'all can actually take the structure that is stated here because I think what's really helpful will be the structure and not so much the content, but yeah, you can take the skeleton of the paragraph. So you can say one writer believes in that, the other writer believes in that, or like what they talk about in their passage. Because you're giving insight into like the passages, and then you say, okay, I find both writers fairly compelling, but I would prefer this author's views to the other. And you need to explain why, like what one-liner like as I believe his arguments are blah blah blah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So similarly, this one is a slightly more complicated intro paragraph, but this one is they integrate elaboration and a bit of evaluation into the intro paragraph, which is not really necessary, but if you have time, like say 40 minutes left to write your AQ, I don't see why not. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So okay. So now we'll go into the body paragraph after intro. So we can say that we can start with a similar argument. So like we do with a similarity thing. So we say a similar argument asserted by both Lee and Andrews is that personal data is constantly being collected. Then Lee asserts blah evidence. So we do our we do our statement and then our evidence. So like quote unquote. And then you say, the other author also highlights, like similarly highlights and evidence. Then because you are asked to apply it to Singaporean society or your society, so you can say this is undeniably applicable to Singapore. And then you add in your own knowledge to show that your argument has depth, and you're ready to flex your knowledge or whatever. Then yeah, next. Okay, and then here's the part where you actually show your disagreement. So balance, right? Balance. So you must say, I do not agree as greatly with Andrew's argument as I agree with Lee's argument, okay? And then you need to explain why lah, okay? And I think peel is very useful because in every single context in humanities paper, we have to use peel. Yeah, it guides our thinking, yeah. And it's rather surgical, but oh well. Anyway, and then after that, you can compare and contrast. So this contrasts greatly with Lee's argument, which asserts the evidential point that blah 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 da. So the parts that are highlighted are actually skeletons for y'all to use in your essay. So you can memorize, or I don't know how y'all learn, but y'all can think about how y'all want to use this skeleton to your benefit. Yep. Next. Okay, so there is a way to, if you are feisty and you want to roast, there's a way to actually argue that you don't accept both views. And actually, I wouldn't really recommend this if you are not very confident with AQ yet, but towards the end, I mean after prelims and towards A levels, you will build your sense of confidence from the multiple practices that you do, and you can actually have the option of rejecting both views. So what this means, so you cannot like reject just because you want to reject, but rather you have to provide a very, very good reason as to why you want to reject both views. And the pitfall is that you will need to have a lot of knowledge on the particular subject matter that is discussed to actually reject both views and to show your own viewpoint. Yeah, but it's possible. Yeah, next.
And now we move on to your frequently asked questions, because there was quite a lot of this in the what do you call it, sign up form. Yeah. So this was a very interesting question which I related to, because there is that one annoying question in the 10-year series I know that is completely out of this world. And yeah, so it is, what do I do if the question is set very weirdly? Okay. And cry. No, that's not the answer. Okay, we're just kidding. Please don't panic. If the question is set weird, take deep breaths, fall back on what you know. Okay, so firstly, analyze the question requirements, then answer the question. Okay, so in all subjects, once again, all topics, all papers, the question is king. Okay, so if you answer the question, you will not go wrong. AQ is about relating back to your own or your society's experience. So that is something you should definitely try to weave in, even though the question might not, talk about it. After all, it's an application question, so try your best to include it. Okay, and last and most importantly, do not forget your pure structure. Though surgical, it is foolproof. Okay. And next would be, how do I choose points to write about? So as long as it answers the question, it is an okay point to choose. Okay, so pro tip, basically look at your paragraphs and find the topic sentence. Okay, and that topic sentence is probably what you should be quoting. All right, and next.
Yeah, so time management. Please don't ever start your paper 2 with your AQ. Like, I understand that, sometimes you're worried that you don't have time to finish your AQ, but the truth is that AQ is only 10 marks out of the 50 marks. The rest of the paper, like your short answer questions, your summary, they're all equally as important as your AQ. So I don't see why you should compromise, the other sections for the AQ. But nevertheless, during the AQ at the end of the exam, I mean towards the end of the exam, it's always better because you get to analyze the passage via your short answer questions and summary anyway, and you do think about it. But one pro tip that Steffi suggested just now was that you can actually read the question before you start the paper, so that you kind of have a frame of mind when you go in and you know exactly what points to look out for. So you can keep that in mind. Okay, but if you do not have time, please don't panic, because there's no point in panicking. Like, panicking is just going to make you feel worse. Yeah. So always fall back on your structure, because structure is what gives you clarity and what gives the examiner clarity as well. So signposting will definitely help with structure. Yeah. So so to score the highest band, you will need to have balance. And if you can't have the ideal 3 to 4 paragraphs, which, two supporting, one opposing, which obviously shows that, you support one more than the other, always just write one supporting view and one opposing view to show that, hey, I've considered all aspects of the question. Yeah, next.
Yeah, that's also part of your rubrics. So if you want to, do it in a smart way, you just just write your opposing point, because that will give you that balance mark and you can go up at least one level. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. Next. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so how do we study for AQ? So early on when Steffi and I were discussing, actually I personally felt that studying for like GP is really, if you study for your essay, technically you have studied for your paper too lah. But okay, honestly, the key to GP is language. It's a question of it's a test of your language. And memorizing relevant structure, sentences, words would actually help you articulate your points well. And it will help to impress the examiner. Of course, use phrases and sentences you understand. There's no point adding in a sentence that you don't understand and it's wrongly used. It's wrongfully used. Yeah, anyway, but you need to have a good sense of the English language, which can be helped by reading more newspapers, as cliche as it sounds. And nowadays, people don't really read big newspapers anymore. Books, I think, fiction, non-fiction, likewise. Yeah. For AQ specifically, characteristics of your society, yes. Be more aware of things that are going on, and I mean now every news is on COVID-19, but still read up. Yeah. And also don't worry too much about, memorizing examples for certain topics, because when you panic, I mean, in the exam, it's very normal to forget what you memorize, and ultimately you'll just fall back on your pre-existing knowledge, which is why it's important to fill your brain with current affairs and news. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, not saying that you shouldn't memorize examples. Of course, memorizing examples is great, but especially when it comes to unexpected questions. For instance, like for me and Nadia's last year's paper, we study everything. We're so sure that environment or art's gonna come out. Then we flip open the paper, and then we see one big word: apologies. Okay, so in that scenario, you have to like start to think, oh my goodness, where did I read the word? Where did I read about the topic apologies um, in like Singapore news? And then that is where your actually like your reading up on current affairs will come in, and that is where you just like think about your lived experience and try to pick something out of your brain, because uh, the trend in GP now is just to survive. Okay, so like anything can come out, and whatever it is, just be able to apply and survive. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so I think language will really help too, because if everyone has like pre-existing knowledge on certain subject, like apologies, like no one expected that. So no one would have had a head start in knowing about the topic on apologies. So language or structure or clarity of articulating your points would really be useful in setting you apart from other candidates. Yeah.
And finally, it's the Q&A session. This is the time for you guys to unmute or go into what do you call it, the Microsoft Teams chat, and type in your message. Yes, if you have any questions, just go ahead and type it. We'll give you a while. Okay, so anything at all.
Oh I forgot to add that actually the length of your intro can easily be 1 or 2 lines. It doesn't have to be like half a page because you won't have time. Yeah. So prioritize if you have sufficient. Okay, we have like a question. So, hi, what do you prioritize if you don't have sufficient time left for AQ? Okay, Steffi, do you want to answer that? Oh,
Sure, I can go first. So if I don't have, wait, when you're talking about what do you prioritize, as in, what kind of content you prioritize, or which section? Because once again, it's about survival. If you have 5 minutes left, I would just recommend trying your best to write a very short intro and then
see,
one
I
paragraph.
believe in blast dance. I don't-
Yeah. So okay, let's say if it's about content, you're already on your AQ. Let's say you have like 10 minutes just to write something and make it as many marks as possible. Then I would think that you should prioritize on first getting your overall stance out, and then you talk about you try to do the at least one pure structure, okay? And if you have a little bit more time, right, make sure you weave in balance into that particular one paragraph that you've written, okay? And that might be a way to score maybe around a 4,
Yeah.
or maybe even a 5 if you're very lucky. But let's say you have enough time to write another paragraph. That is when you ditch your second supporting view and you start to write your opposing view. So give credit to the author where it's due. Okay, so that is basically how you score better under time pressure. Yeah. Any other questions? How long should one paragraph be? I think it's really very subjective. It depends on how concise, how to the point you are. Because after all, once if you do have your PEL already, right, I don't think there's like a word limit or minimum number of words you need to hit. As long as you have that PEL structure, you should be good. Nadia, what do you think?
I think one paragraph should be about like, if you have like average handwriting, about 6 to 7 lines. Yeah.
Okay, but at the A levels, the booklet they give you is very skinny, so it will probably look a bit more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
really, don't fret about the length lah. Yeah.
Yeah. Most importantly is the content.
Not, but 6 to 7 lines are good. I mean, it's not good lah, but it's what I did. And I have like regular handwriting. Okay, we have the next question. How many examples do I have to give? In a paragraph? Okay, in a paragraph, how many examples would you give?
Personally, I would just try to relate it to one example in my society, or if the question asks about my own experience, then I'll try to weave in my own experience also. Yeah, but generally it's just one per paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah. It shows depth lah to bring in an example. If not, sometimes, if you agree with the author, then la-di-da, like there's no...
Yeah. It's a bit different from the essay in that sense. You can really zoom in onto one, but at the same time, I believe that you should maybe try to have a general statement about your society with regards to the matter, and then you dive into your evidence, because you don't want to seem as too like specifically like example driven. So
Yeah.
it's all about the persuasion. Yeah.
Okay, someone asked, should the balance be in the same para as one of your supporting points, or should it be in another new paragraph? I think personally, I would do it in another paragraph, even if it's a short paragraph. Yeah.
Okay, but for me, it's as we said earlier on, like there's the weaving technique, right? So basically, that 1 or 2 sentences that you low-key roast the author. While I do see some merit in this particular argument, it is of my opinion that or like that kind of helpful phrases for you to use, that can actually help you score a bit for balance as well. Yeah, but generally the most balance, the higher balance points comes from writing a whole different paragraph.
But really, I mean, AQ is quite lax, man. Like that, there is no one set technique to score, and I think that's where the difficulty is as well. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
how to pick up points from passage sometimes. Okay, I feel like due to time pressure, I'm unable to pick up points from both passages well, and elaborate from there. Okay, this is a very packed question. Okay, firstly, how to pick up points from passage. I think Steffi already suggested taking the topic sentences. It can actually help. But in a case where, it doesn't really help by picking out the topic sentences, my argument would be that, okay, you can look at a sentence. Okay, it takes time, but you can take look at a sentence and see if it answers the question. So if it's a question on like dolphins and the sentence talks about whales, then obviously it doesn't really answer the question. So yeah, unable to pick up points from both. What do you think, Steffi?
Unable to, okay, I think if you want to work towards correcting this, right, maybe let's say in your next test it might be a bit hard. So if you really want to try to see what points you can take out, you have to read more, and then try to read more of like those opinion essays, and then you try to pick out, use your highlighter or computer to highlight what are the topic sentences, what points is this particular author raising, okay, and unable to both passages to elaborate from there. And with respect to elaboration, once again, it's about the preparation. So reading of your current affairs and knowledge of your society is basically the most important. If you do this prep work, I believe with time, you will find that it gets easier and easier to find these points and elaborate on them.
The structure of your language, like in the paragraph, also helps with the elaboration, because sometimes it might, be a bit blurry whether or not it's a explanation or elaboration or a link. But having a word like furthermore would actually provide depth to that elaboration. So this kind of guiding words are actually very, very important. Yeah. So try to add as many such guiding words as possible. Yeah. Okay. Next. For supporting argument, is the balance supposed to be like a counter argument? Steffi, you want to answer that?
Personally, I would put the counter argument in a different paragraph because that's gonna be long. Okay, so what I mentioned earlier about the weaving in of balance is just a very brief explanation of why the author might think in a certain way, and then you just dispel that certain way. For instance, this thing might be true in the author society. For instance, like it's very clear that this guy is from America, and maybe like talking about how violence is rampant on the streets, that kind of thing. It's not okay. That's a whole different issue of its own, but that's just an example. So you can think back to Singapore then. Oh, is this true in our society? Actually, no. So I have to say that although I can understand why he says that in his society, it's not applicable to mine. So that is a way that you can, weave in a certain kind of balance. But yeah, actually, that's basically it.
Okay, next question. Hi, if we really have nothing for the topic, for example, I flip open and see gardens or something, how do I raise local examples and explain? Thanks. Firstly, by seeing the word gardens, I mean, you think about it and it's kind of everywhere because Singapore is a garden city. But okay, but if you really see like a word, like I don't know, like the word textbook or like computer, and you really have no experience with that, or even like Philippines, for example, then think about think of 5 words that you can associate with that word. So like Philippines, what does Philippines have? Like Jollibee, right? Fried chicken, then you can talk. Okay, I mean, you still have to link it back to Philippines, okay? But I'm just saying that with every word, there is an associative word as well, and it might help to guide you. So like gardens, for example, gardens by the bay, garden city, the garden that you visit to exercise. Bishan Park is kind of garden, right? Yeah. And then flowers, nature, Adida. Yeah. So
And I think with respect to like, for instance, other absurd words, like for our year apologies, something you completely won't expect. As you can tell, I'm still very traumatized by that. Um, I really think that it boils down to uh, your understanding of your society, what has happened, okay? And you really will not go wrong if you, uh, do your prep work well, and then you see a completely absurd word. You just have to think and try to link. And I really don't think there'll be any difficulty. Like as Nadia mentioned, like gardens is everywhere. If they
mm,
throw you something like, I don't know, cooking, then once again, maybe you can think about it as like Singapore is a multicultural society, fusion food kind of thing, or you can link it to COVID-19, how people started doing more like home, like food businesses, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's all about calming down and then thinking about it rationally and linking it to what you know. If you cannot really, Dada cannot find from your society, you find from yourself, or no choice really. What you know about people your age maybe. Yeah.
yeah. So like on the topic of apologies lah. So basically things that I read on mainstream media came in very handy because I mean, sometimes you're online and then you see like memes or like I don't know, like local influencer apologizes to another person because of some wrong committed. And you're like, hey, actually I can use that. So don't underestimate the things you read on Instagram or in mainstream media because sometimes it might come in handy. All those nights spent scrolling memes. Actually, it's useful. Yep. Next, my school taught us that we should combine the arguments for supporting and opposing points in the same paragraph. For example, the supporting point goes first, then when the point ends, instead of moving to a new paragraph, you say, however, instead you're opposing view for the same point, then conclude that one outweighs the other so it does not contradict all in the same paragraph. So, which structure do you recommend? Oh, okay. Got it.
I kind of understand.
No,
I
so it's
mean,
like for against, right? Then in that same paragraph, you're like, I think I agree because blah.
this, and then, however, like the
Yeah.
opposing view for the same point, it's possible that this is happening, da 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 da. But then you say one does not outweigh another. Okay. I mean, honestly, right, there really is no fixed structure. Okay, so as long as it works for you, as long as you really don't contradict yourself or make it like so long, like 2 pages long. If your paragraph is 2 pages long, there's something wrong. Okay, I don't care if it's a structure that your school taught you, but it's too confusing. Just have a break somewhere. Okay, and like paragraphing is like a natural thing. So as long as you feel fit that it's time to separate the words, separate it, please. Okay, so with respect to the AQ structure that we showed earlier on, it's just a very basic one that really like foolproof, cannot go wrong. Okay, but if you prefer what your school teaches you, then just go for it, because really, like everything in English, there's no one correct answer. Yeah.
Like I think paragraphing is important because it allows the reader to breathe. So because sorry I have to keep reiterating this point, but your papers will be marked during the Christmas season and it's winter in like London or like Cambridge. And the examiner might be someone old and he needs to breathe, he needs some space to go and get a cup of hot chocolate before continuing marking. So giving the paragraph a break actually helps to let the reader breathe lah. Yeah. So I think with regards to that, I think it's okay as long as it's not too long. Like to the person who asked that question, I think it's okay if it's not too long, but you also gotta be careful, that within the same paragraph you're not repeating the same points but uh, expressing opposite opinions. Yeah.
Mm.
Hmm.
Next
Okay.
question. 6 to 7 lines. I don't know how to control myself. I think I overwrite and it fills up almost the whole page. Oh, I think I have fallen into that trap before. So, how I control myself is I always ask myself when I'm writing a sentence, okay, it's a very purposeful job, okay? So what you have to do is ask yourself, is what I'm writing now relevant to answering the question? Or am I just narrating like the background of my examples? Or am I just going on a tangential rant? Okay, so these are the things that you always have to keep in mind while you're writing. And in the beginning, it's very counterintuitive, so you really have to force yourself, like be very purposeful, do an AQ exercise on your own, and then you take as much time as you need to write a concise paragraph where you don't go off tangent. Okay, so that is a way for you to practice how to make your paragraphs a bit more to the point and less of like one straight paragraph. Or unless like whatever you're writing is really like truly value adding, then like one page is fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. I personally also have fallen into this whole thing, but I think you can think of it as you persuading the reader. So what is most important? Like, for example, if you are a promoter and you're trying to promote a product to a customer, for example, what are the main points that you need to say, that would actually help to value add to the whole to the entire promotion? Like, yeah. Don't ramble, man. Doesn't help. Yeah. Next, do we have to peel for both agree and relevance for each paragraph? So like 2 peels.
Both agree and relevance.
So like for example, if they agree, then they peel it. Then they relevance to society, then they peel it again.
I would say the relevance to society is a part of your peel. So it's like your evidence or elaboration why you would actually agree or disagree with the point that you have mentioned. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, agree. So don't need 2 peels because it'll be very cumbersome, won't it?
It's like an onion, a peel and a peel.
A
Sorry,
peel.
that's not funny.
No, a peel is like.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. Hello, how should I organize my AQ if there are multiple requirements? Which author is more convincing plus relate or argument to observations of society? I think I like to do it step by step. So first, okay, it will be a very long AQ, but it depends, because if it's which author is more convincing plus relating your argument to observations of society, you can integrate the application to society in your paragraphs. But if it's which one is more convincing plus which one do you agree with more, I think I would separate it. But Steffi, what do you think?
It's very. I would actually try to separate it also. Yeah. Unless it's related to each other. So for instance, this author is more convincing because whatever wait, sorry, I want to check if I got the question correct. Which author is more convincing plus relate? Okay, yeah. So one reason why the author can be more convincing is because their examples or whatever arguments that they raise, right, is actually more relevant to your society. So in that case, you can definitely write it in one paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll separate it too because I think that's less confusing.
Yeah, clear cut also. So it's really up to your preference. As long as you answer the question. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Someone asked any advice on evaluation. So
I think you take note of the tips that we mentioned earlier on in our slides. So we'll send it to you, by the way. So no worries on that. Just make sure whatever you're writing is, it's true. So give credit where it's due, and roast where it's due. Okay.
I think roasting with a reason is very useful for evaluation to show that you have your own viewpoint. Because you're like, hey, roast respectfully, but like show that you have personality. Yeah. Okay. Next, regarding balance by using the weaving thing in the supporting paragraphs following the balance, do we need to link back to the main point in the supporting paragraph just in case the marker gets confused or something?
Wait. Mm. So, okay, the balance by the weaving thing, right, it should be very, very short. So it's really just like that one thing. Although like the author says this, it's not very true to my society, this is why. Okay, so whatever you're mentioning about the author, right, is like their their view that you're actually meant to shoot down already. Okay, so it really shouldn't take that long. And by the end of this weaving in, you should be talking about your society's examples and then your overall link back, if that makes sense.
As in, I don't think you need to be concerned that the marker gets confused because they are grading your entire response. They're not reading that paragraph in isolation. So as long as you're clear enough, you know. And don't be too bothered about the weaving thing. Like, it's really to provide nuance to your paragraph by weaving. And it should be a very, like, yeah, I mean, as stated previously, like, while I'm somewhat able to see where this argument is supposed to provide depth. But honestly, if you are not confident using the weaving thing and you are afraid that the marker gets confused, then by all means, you should actually, try not to get yourself into that situation where you second guess yourself as well. Because I think second guessing yourself during the exam is quite bad. But anyway, the weaving thing is good, but yeah. Anyway. Next. I tried to indicate.
Oh, by the way, guys, for those of you who have no questions, right, you can actually fill in this feedback form and go to our Discord if you want more of such events, as well as free study help. So we're just gonna leave this screen out there while we continue our Q&A.
Okay, I tried to integrate them using examples, but I forgot I think this was with regards to, the person who commented that, who asked how to organize her AQ, his or her AQ if there are multiple requirements, has actually said that it's very tricky when there are multiple requirements, and it's worrying because there's a lack of time to, and you have to integrate it, and evaluation and application actually can get muddled. So, Steffi, any advice on that? Actually,
Mm, um, wait, let me just clarify. Okay, sorry. I think that if you practice enough with your pew structure, right, there's like a rather gut feel kind of way approach. So you really just try to whack your point and then your evaluation and then your you whack your point, your explanation, then your evaluation, and then link. And then if personally, I would think that your application of to your society is also part of your evaluation. So if you are able to show how like the point is relevant or irrelevant to your society, that in itself is already evaluation. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Sorry, not much evaluation here, but anyway. Okay, next. Is 30 minutes too much for AQ? Because I spent 30 minutes in my recent exam, but I got a 4, lol. Okay, so personally, I don't think time is directly related to how much you score in the AQ. Because what they're actually marking or looking out for are concise points. And sometimes having too much time will actually cause you to ramble. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's not whether 30 minutes is too much or not. Rather, it's within that 30 minutes, are you able to come up with a clear and concise argument without rambling? Because when you have the luxury of time, you will fall into that whole stream of consciousness, or you'll be like, oh yeah, I have time, I can write 6-7 pages long of AQ. And you may not be hitting the points. But when you are pressed for time, you need to identify, which are the important points. So yeah, it's a I would say it's not too much time for AQ, but when you have the luxury of time, you need to know how to find the correct points, and you need to know when to stop.
Yeah, and it's definitely like if you draw a graph, right, the more time you spend on it is definitely not the higher your marks. Okay, so what you really need to do is just to make sure if you're 4, right, it just means that you're probably lacking the balance or your persuasion is not there. So these are like techniques or like areas that you can start to work on from now on.
One way to work on your persuasion technique is to do it in everyday life. So, for example, I mean, you can persuade your families or friends to support a point that you believe in. Have such arguments. And actually, it will help to guide your.
Mm.
To show personality in AQ lah. I think so. Yeah.
And any more questions? Hi.
Why? No, there's must be the balance. Or must the balance be on the same point as your supporting view, or must it be on a brand new point? Oh, okay. So it's like, I get it. You get it.
So I think, like as mentioned earlier, there are two ways to do the balance. You can either like weave it into your supporting argument, or or the other method would be to have a whole paragraph just for the balance, which is your opposing view and how you concede that this is to a very large extent applicable to my society as well. Yeah. So there's that.